Research methods and wargaming. Methodology. Okay, you have already selected a research topic for your Homeland Security issue analysis. You've researched the topic and you've established a research question and thesis. This week you will form a methodology to test your thesis in relation to your research question. Now, this can be one of the more confusing parts of the term. Be patient with yourselves, be patient with me. For many folks, this is a first time to do this. Okay, what is a research method or a methodology? The methods section describes actions taken to investigate a research problem and the rationale for application of specific procedures or techniques used to identify, select, process, and analyze information applied to understanding the problem, thereby allowing the reader to critically evaluate a study's overall validity and reliability. Well, in Marine speak, that means, how are you going to test your thesis? Essentially, what you need to do is figure out a way to test your thesis that has value and the reader can comprehend. A methodology section of a research paper answers two main questions. How is the data collected or generated, and how is it analyzed? Writing should be direct, precise, and as always, written in the past tense. Basically explain how and why you selected your research method and how it works. And I'm here to tell you, the how it works part is far more important than the how and why you selected the method. If you don't necessarily have to find an established method for doing this, and you'll understand a little bit further on in this lecture. But explaining how it works and that it makes sense is important. A methodology is crucial for any branch of scholarship because unreliable method produces unreliable results, and as a consequence undermines the value of your interpretations of findings. The findings, basically, if you mess up this part, your paper might not make a whole lot of sense, or it might not be taken that seriously. Again, there's a variety of methods. You should explain why you're choosing what you're choosing, but more importantly, show how it's analyzing the data. There's two different groups of research methods. The empirical analytical group approaches the study of social sciences in a rather similar manner that researchers study natural sciences. They actually have a computer program for liberal arts majors, which is essentially a Fisher-Price version of Excel, and it's called SPSS, Statistical Program for Social Sciences. IBM makes it, and it's what they give liberal arts majors to do statistical programs. In the political science and international studies worlds, you are required to take a full year of statistics. There's normal, what we call stats, and then there's advanced quantitative analytical statistics, which is a really, really big title for just more stats. Interesting enough, you literally will do no math. You will not do the math work in these classes. The computer program will do it for you. So essentially, when we were told you'll never have a calculator, they were right. But instead of a calculator, now we have a computer. The other group, the qualitative group, is the interpretive group of methods is focused on understanding the phenomena in a comprehensive, holistic way. More simply put, your method will either be quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative means you're going to construct a mathematical theory based on relevant data. This will use correlation coefficients and create a dependent variable from a combination of no more than 5 independent variables. This is how they plot and attempt to predict everything from who's going to go to war to who's going to win elections. It's, no kidding, a math problem. And what they do is they select, usually it's no more than 5 or 6 variables. And they put a coefficient next to it as far as how important it is. And that produces a dependent variable. And that number there is compared to the results. And if your theory, your model, which is what this would be called, a model, is effective more than 0.6% of the time, 60% of the time, it's considered robust. Examples of this, one time I sat there in my copious free time of trying to learn SPSS, I made a model to determine, actually the first model I made was to see if Heisman Trophy winners, how much of a role did that play in going to the Hall of Fame? And it didn't play anything at all, actually. Then I started and I dug deeper and I said, what factors could you sit there and look at a senior playing college football and say, okay, look at these 5 or 6 things, he'll probably go to the Hall of Fame? And again, you're dealing with tons of numeric data and tons. You would have to look at everybody from the Hall of Fame, and you can include things such as how many games he started, what conference did he play in, what school did he play for, how successful was that school, what was the win percentage of that school. You could even, you could even isolate who the coach was and how much winning he had. It's a variety of things. The kicker of it is you have to justify each variable with a theory. That theoretically this person is going to be a better pro football player because he started more games in college, or this person will be a better football player because he came from the Big Ten as opposed to the Big South or the MAC. Qualitative is carried out when we wish to understand meanings, look at, describe, and understand experience, ideas, belief, values, intangibles, such as these. These methodologies rely on surveys, observations, or, and this is important, case studies. Case studies are big. That's what a lot of what you might have already had to deal with use, and also probably moving on in the future, because it deals with the practical application of theories. How is all this going to translate from being in this little academic journal you read to real life? Case in point, one big debate in political science is the correlation between wealth and democracy. Somebody somewhere with a whole bunch of funny letters after his name said that richer countries tend to be more democratic. Well, of course, that wasn't completely right. But remember, to be robust, to be to have weight, to be considered a good theory, you only have to be applicable 60% of the time. So that's considered a somewhat valuable theory. What should the methodology section look like and contain? The introduction to your methodology section should begin by restating the research problem and underlying assumptions underpinning your study. You have to explain what the problem is. What are you going to assume? If you're assuming that a certain tactic on the border will decrease immigration, you're assuming the immigration will potentially come at a constant rate. You're also going to assume that no laws will change. So again, those are examples of assumptions. The introduction, explain your approach based on the information from your lit review. Remember, from here on out, you do not want to have to do any more research. You might have to go maybe grab 2 or 3 sources, but largely all your research should be done. Think of it in terms of a court case. You can't bring in a surprise witness after everybody's discovery without telling anybody. The judge will toss it out of court. You kind of want to rely on that. If there are sources that can expound upon sources that you've already investigated, that's fine, but you should basically be done cracking the books. Explain your approach based on the information from your lit review. There needs to be a theoretical basis for it. What should it look like and contain? Introduce the overall methodological approach for investigating your research problem, qualitative or quantitative. Describe the specific methods of data collection you're going to use, case studies, surveys, interviews, questionnaires, observations, or archival research. Describe the specific methods of data collection. And explain how you intend to analyze your results. That is the most important part. You have to explain what are you looking for. Provide a justification for your subject selection. If you're going to use case studies, what are you going to look for in case studies? If you're going to look for, if you're going to do something about democracy, you want to explain why you're going to pick the countries you pick. If you're going to do something about homeland security, like I'd say cyber, maybe you want to select a couple different targets for cyber crimes. You need to explain why you pick those. And you also have to talk about the potential limitations of your approach. There always will be some. Nobody expects your methodology or your theory to be 100% perfect. The key is to look for patterns of reference to your research question. What do your samples have in common? How are they different? Are there patterns? This can lead you to theoretically set your methodology. For the purpose of this class, we will either use small sample quantitative data analysis or case studies. Your methodology should be approximately 1 page. It's a section to itself. If there are any questions, feel free to contact me.